Hello everyone, this is General Hand Grenade. Welcome to my war room in Prince George, British Columbia. Today's video is another in our series of Global War 1936 to 1945 Nations series that I've been doing. And this one is going to be on France. But there's going to be a big surprise in this one, so you're definitely going to want to keep watching it. A really big surprise, and I think you're going to like it. So let's just talk about France for a minute. Now, they weren't long in the war now, were they? They got overrun pretty quickly after going after Czechoslovakia in the east. The Germans turned around, and the French, they thought they had it sewn up, and they did, like they had this Maginot Line that is right here. It's a series of fortifications that were really almost impenetrable, and the like the Germans did not want to take that on, but the French knew that if the Germans wanted to attack them, they were going to have to go through these countries over here, and France thought that would be okay, right? Like they didn't mind that, because better to fight the war on somebody else's soil than on your own, right? What they didn't account for, I think, was the speed with which the Germans moved with their lightning war, right, with their blitzkrieg. And so they were able to get in there and get Paris pretty quickly, and that's simulated pretty well in this game as well. And then lots of stuff happened after that, and that's where the interesting part is going to come in. But before we get to that part, let's just go through France here. So their income in production in 1936, they start with 6 IPPs, and their wartime income is 18. So if you count up all of the land zones that have a number on it for France, you'll find that they add up to 18, and that's all over the world. Like they had colonies, much like the Commonwealth. They had colonies all over the world, but not as many though. The British Empire was definitely larger than the French Empire. So that's 1936. In 1939, again, they start with 6, but their income tracker starts at 18 though. And in 1939, they start at war with Germany, and they're aligned with the British Commonwealth. In 36, they're at peace with all nations, and they control Abyssinia. We talked about that in the Italian video there. Italy is at war with Abyssinia, so the French are controlling the Abyssinian forces. Now, their home country. So their home country is Paris here, and all the nations around it, or sorry, the land zones around it that are bordering Paris. That's the home country there, and everything else is considered to be a colony of France. Lend-lease. France may lend lease to any nation that is at war with a major power. They're probably not going to do much of that though, because by that time, when other people start going to war, then France isn't going to have much money. Once their capital is taken over. If that happens, I played a game where France didn't lose their capital, but that was completely weird. The guy went after Russia right away and just gave them a sound thrashing and everything. It was kind of neat to see France survive, but I mean, they still didn't win because of Russia not doing so well. Like Russia was completely taken over. Demilitarized border. France cannot build a fortification along the border towards Belgium as long as Belgium is neutral. So that's what they're talking about here. In other words, you can't extend, like there's already a fortification here. They won't let you extend that fortification here while Belgium is neutral. So that's probably not going to happen, because Germany's not just going to attack Belgium and stop. They're going to keep going, right, when they attack them. And mobilization. France cannot make a land attack into German or Italian home country until it has been at war for one full French turn. In other words, it has started and ended the turn at war. Okay? And then surrender. France surrenders immediately when either Paris is enemy possessed or all land zones surrounding Paris are enemy possessed. So if you take out Paris, then Paris is done for. If you take out all the territories around Paris and don't even touch Paris, then again, Paris is done for. You just take all the units off. So if you were to take Paris, then you just remove all of the units that are here in the home country. And then, like, if you were to surround it, then you would just take off all the rest of the units that are inside of Paris. And then what had happened at that point is the Vichy rule. But before we get to that, let's just continue with France here. Let me just look on the other side. Okay, declarations of war. France can declare war on Germany, Italy, and Japan once France reaches the wartime income, and that's 18, remember, and only if that nation has declared war on another nation during the game. So that could be a minor power or a major power that they declare war on. That's when France can declare war on one of the Axis powers. And the Russians now, the CCP, Germany or Japan has surrendered. So either Berlin or Tokyo has fallen, which is not likely. Or USSR currently possesses an original Allied land zone. So let's just move the camera here. Let's show you what that might look like. So let's just look at this territory down here. Here is Transjordan right here. So let's say Italy came over and took Transjordan out, right? Well, then Russia comes down and takes Transjordan back. Now, Russia has the choice. They can either give Transjordan back to the British now, or they can hang on to it. They could say, you know what, we're going to keep that. It's worth $1. We're going to collect for it. So in that case there, France could declare war on the Russians. I mean, any of the Allied powers could declare war that way. Now, if they don't have to declare war right away, like this could happen, say, in 1939, 1940, and maybe the Allies don't want to go to war with the Russians at that point in time. So they can just save that for later, right? But then if Russia decides to give this back before the Allies declare war on them, any one of the Allies, then they can't declare war on them anymore. So there's that. So yeah, the Russians, it's up to the Russians whether or not they go to war with them, right? In that instance. So another one is USSR has declared war on a neutral power not adjacent to the Soviet home country. Let's take I want to show you this something that I was unclear on in my earlier videos with the other nations. Okay, so what we're talking about is the Russian home country here, right? And they're allowed to attack the nations that are on the border of the home country. What they can't do, they can attack anybody they want, but if they only attack the nations that are on the border of their home country, then the Allies can't declare war on them, right? But what I was saying at one point in time, I was talking about land zones. So if they took southern Iran, then you could attack them. But that's not correct, though, because southern Iran is part of Iran, and Iran borders Russia, right? But on the other hand, though, let's say it's Iraq. Iraq here, there is no part of Iraq that touches the Russian border, and so touches the Russian home country, I mean. So if the Russians were to take a country like Iraq or Portugal or Greece, someplace that is not adjacent to the Soviet home country, then the Allies can declare war on them. They can declare war right away, or they can declare war later. There's no amount of giving it back, like I was saying with Transjordan here. Once they've done that, they've done that. The Allies can file that for information later, and they can declare war on them. And the last one is if USSR declares war on the USA or Great Britain, then France could declare war on them. They can't declare war on any of their allies, obviously. They can't declare war on Great Britain or the United States or China, or the KMT in China, the nationalists. And they can declare war on the minor powers. So all of the neutral nations they can declare war on. But like the British and the Americans, if they do that, then they have to pay a 10 IPP penalty. You can divide that 10 IPP penalty amongst the allies, everybody contributing a little bit. But the other one is that not only is that you have to pay the 10 IPP, but the Americans are going to suffer a -8 on their peacetime income. And you want the Americans in the war as soon as possible. So that's a really, really big penalty. It's unlikely that France is going to declare war on any of the minor powers because of that. So that is their declarations of war. I'll come right back and we'll talk about their increases. In order for France to get from the 6 IPPs where they start from up to the 18 IPPs, which is their maximum, their wartime income, they have to rely on the peacetime income increases, and that's the only thing that they can rely on. If they were to take territory, like I was just saying, it's probably not likely. But if they were, then that's not included. You would count that separately. But as far as their peacetime income increases, there's several of them. So there's French rearmament. So starting in July of 1939, French income increases by D6. So only a D6. You're not rolling a D12 here. You roll a D6, and whatever the number is on the die, that's how much you would add to the income. And that would be at the start of your turn that you do that for the French. Again, one of the other ones, Germany declares war on the USSR. That would be +5 to the French income. Germany or Italy declares war on any other nation. So that's 2d12. You would take two 12-sided dice and roll them, and whatever those numbers total to, you would add that to the French income. Now that's something that probably would bring them very close, if not over that 18 threshold. But you don't go over 18. Like if you rolled the dice and it got to 23, it doesn't matter. You can't go higher than 18. So you would just put your income tracker at 18 and go on from there. Another one, Germany or Italy declares war on the British Commonwealth. Then France moves to wartime income, which is 18. Germany annexes Bohemia, Slovakia, and Austria. On the first 3 turns of the game, that's probably going to happen. Germany just needs to move in a unit. They don't have to fight them or anything. They're just annexing those territories, and they're adding them to their income and changing the units into German units. And they do that for free, right? But what happens, though, is that the French are going to get +1 each time that happens. So by the 3rd turn in, France will have +3 because Germany has done that. And then just one of them for Japan. So Japan declares war on a neutral nation or China, and that's +1. So they're not really too concerned about Japan, in other words. They're much more concerned about Germany, right? And that's all of their peacetime increases. So once they go to war with a major power, then there's a couple of wartime bonuses that they could get. One is the Allies possess Eastern Egypt. So that's where the Suez Canal is over here, right? The Suez Canal is a really important spot because that's one of the entrances to the Mediterranean there. So if the Allies possess that, then the French are going to get +1 each turn. And the other one is France possesses Cochin China or Annan Tonkin. That's the 2 French territories that are over here. They used to be called Hanoi and Saigon, but they're not anymore. Those were city names. So if France possessed these 2 territories here, then they're going to get +2 just for doing that. Plus they're going to get, like this one's worth 2 and this is worth 1. So really they're going to get 5 for owning those 2, right? And then there is their strategic naval movement. And that's something they might use because, like, here's a transport right here. It's not doing them any good over here, so they might just take that and go 5 spaces from this naval port. Let's just see where they could go from there. So let's move this over. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They could put it all the way over in this zone right here. They could go 5 spaces with it. And they have 2 units that they can do that with. Now that is only transports and the units that are on the transports. It does not include any type of warships or submarines, anything like that. It's only for transports and their cargo that add up to 2. So you could do 2 transports or a transport with something on it. That's how you would move it. And let me just see here. I think that's it to do with the French. They do have a couple of specialized units, and let me just get to those in a second here. So France has colonial infantry, and for 4 IPP, they're just like regular infantry. You probably just use a regular infantry sculpt. They work just like Italy's and just like Britain's. You have to put them on a French territory outside of the home country, a territory that has a dollar value on it. So like this one here, Tunisia, this is worth $1. I could put 1 here. If the territory had a 2 on there, if it was worth 2, then you could put 2 colonial infantry on it. You can't put more than 2 on per turn though, not like on the whole board. You can only do a maximum of 2 colonial infantry. Just like any kind of specialized infantry, you can only buy 2 per turn. You know, whether it's Marines or Mountain or whatever, right? It says right on the cards there, you can only buy 2 of each per turn. And then the other thing they have is the French Foreign Legion here. Let's move up a little bit here. That's this guy right here. They start with 1 on the board. So everybody's heard of the French Foreign Legion before. I've got them on these chips here. Plus HBG has these sculpts here, Foreign Legion sculpts, that are pretty darn nice. Anyway, same thing. You do exactly like the colonial infantry. It costs the same and everything. They attack at 2, defend at 4, move 1. The difference with them is that they don't suffer penalties in the desert, because that's famously what they were for, was for the desert, right? They got that towel hanging back in behind their head there to keep the sun off, you know. Like that's the classic picture that you think of when you think of the Foreign Legion, right? So normally, like if there was a French border, a desert border, then you would normally suffer a -1 for a ground unit on the first round, and then no penalty after that. Or if it was a total desert territory, then you would suffer -1 on all rounds of combat. But for the French Foreign Legion, though, he is not going to suffer a -1 penalty. He's going to attack at a 2, not a 1. Whereas this guy here, he would have just attacked at a 1, right? If he was attacking. So there's that. Desert's a little bit more than that, like a vehicle class unit. There's penalties for that too, but we don't have to worry about that because we're only talking about an infantry unit here. So that's all they have is the colonial infantry and the French Foreign Legion. There's just one last thing to get to now before the fall of France. So it's the France and Free France victory objectives. France can get a total of 3 points if you get them all. 1 is to disarm Germany. So you score 1 victory objective if German-owned land zones total less than 24 IPP at the end of the game. So that's a little bit more than the originally controlled zones, right? Another one is eliminate communism. Score 1 victory objective if the Comintern does not possess any land zone adjacent to French home country. So that includes these guys here, right? If the Republicans win the war, the Spanish Civil War, then they're probably going to be bordering on France, the French home country. So you wouldn't get that point. And the other one is maintain the empire. Score 1 victory objective if at the end of the game France has possession of all its starting land zones that are worth 1 or more IPP. Now that one's going to be a difficult thing to obtain, or isn't? You know, like first of all, you'd have to go and take your home country back, and so good luck. If you do take it back, though, I mean, that would get rid of the Vichy, so you might get all of them. But anyway, that's a tough point to get. Not going to lie. So we'll come back and we'll talk about the fall of Paris. As I was saying at the top of this video here, France is probably not long for this game, right? They're probably going to be taken out by the Germans. That's going to happen in, I bet you, 95% of the games you play. Maybe more than 95. Could be 99%. I thought it was really weird when I hung on to them that one game. So let's just talk about that for a second. I mean, a lot of people like to make fun of the French because of this, and that they couldn't fight, and there was this and there was that. The truth is that it's a lot more complicated than that. If you want to really understand what happened there, you have to kind of go back 140 years to the French Revolution, to when that ended. Before that happened, everybody was ruled by monarchies. Like just about every nation on earth had some kind of emperor or king or queen or something, and they were all ruled by monarchies, and passed down through generations in their own families, and there was no democracy, there was no freedom, right? And the French Revolution was one of the biggest events in human history, because that was the turning point right there. And like just before that happened was the American Revolution as well. But like they didn't actually overthrow a king or a queen. They just booted them out of their country. Like they had the benefit of being across an ocean, and all they had to do was defeat that army that was over there. The French, though, they actually took him and cut his head off, right? The King of England and his wife. She was Marie Antoinette there. She famously said, "Let them eat cake," because the peasants were starving, and they cut her head off. I bet you they enjoyed that. Anyway, so that happened, right? And the world started changing. They started going towards more liberal democracies, or at least the Western world did. We're talking about Western Europe, like Germany and England and France and then the United States and Canada and Australia. A lot of places started going towards liberal democracies, right? And it took varying degrees of time to get there for everybody, but eventually that's where they all went to, and that's when it started, was that French Revolution. Now, that didn't sit well with everybody in France, though. Even though it was 140 years later, the remaining, like the descendants of the French aristocracy, they still had this bee in their bonnet, like that they should still be able to tell peasants what to do, and they still favored authoritarianism, the right-wing element in their country, the extreme right-wing element, and the Catholics, and the aristocracy, like that's what they wanted, right? So when Hitler came in, I mean, there you go. There's a right-wing authoritarian right there, right? So when he in the early days, like the fall of Paris, nobody knew what was going on. Like they didn't just surrender, all of France surrender as soon as Paris was taken over. There was confusion. Like they were trying to hunt down the government of France, and they kept moving around, so they couldn't catch them, right? And they just happened to be in one place where communications were really bad, and these traitors, I'll call them traitors, I'd like to use words worse than that, from this element that I talked about. We'll sign an armistice with you. They didn't have the authority really to do that, right? The authority rested in the government, and these guys weren't the government. They were members of the government, but members of parliament, right? So they signed the armistice with the Germans. It was basically treason what they did, and then and by the time the dust had settled and everything, it was too late. Like the Germans had all moved in, and they set up a Vichy government, a puppet government. And the reason it's called Vichy is because down here in southern, like right around here, I would think, somewhere around here, there's a town called Vichy. Rather than set their government up in Paris, they set it up down there in a town called Vichy. And this area down here was called Free, I think they called it Free France or something like that. But it wasn't free, right? I mean, there was nothing free about it. They just, they try to make people feel better by telling them that. And basically what the Vichy government did was they administrated France, like the civilian population. They had a very, very small army that was not strong enough to stand up to the Germans. They had the police force, but like they ran the fire halls, and they were the mayors and things like that, right? And the reason that Hitler wanted to do this, though, why he wanted to set up this puppet regime like that, was because like it would have taken a lot of resources. They had hardly fought the French army at all. Most of the French army was along the Maginot Line. There was 200,000 of them up there. They hadn't even touched those guys yet, and it would have taken a lot of resources. But the bigger thing than that even was the French Navy. The French Navy was pretty strong, and he knew that was going to that they were going to have trouble in the Mediterranean with the French Navy in there. And so he said, yeah, sure, let's set it up, right? And he thought that he was going to get that French Navy too, right? But then the British, before the Germans could take over, the British went and attacked that Navy. Didn't make the Vichy guys very happy. But anyway, they scuttled a good part of the French Navy, sent it to the bottom of the ocean, or the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea. Anyway, it's that's just a really, really brief explanation of what happened. It wasn't France that surrendered. It was a bunch of traitors that surrendered on behalf of France. And so, don't be too hard on them. It was too late by the time that anybody realized what had happened. Still, they did lose, though. I mean, they lost really early. I'm just saying that there's more to it than that. And there's a lot more to it than what I've said, too. It's actually a lot more complicated than that. I've been reading about it lately in advance of making this video, and in other videos that I've made. And man, it's really complicated. But anyway, that's just a general overview. So let's get to the specifics of how they do that in the game here. Okay, so once the fall of Paris happens, and we talked about how that would happen, then it's up to the Germans to decide whether or not to establish the Vichy. And I haven't played a game where they haven't. It's definitely in their best interest to do that. They could get some boats out of it. Definitely they're going to get an ally out of it, rather than just leaving what's left of the board to be free French, right? It's better off trying to take half of that or more. And so they usually do set up the Vichy. So how that happens is, like, you take every territory on the board. Actually, let me just show you something here. I made this sheet up myself here. Like, this is on the back of the France thing. So I tried to make it look like that. I copied and pasted that top thing up there, and I matched the parts on the bottom down there. And then I took this right out of the rule book there, how to establish the Vichy. Like, you put the Vichy army in southern France there. You place 3 infantry, 1 fighter, and 1 artillery in Vichy France, or southern France. And then the French colonies, it tells you what to roll. And so, like, let's take an example here. Northern, western, and southern Algeria there. So here, you don't necessarily roll all the territories by themselves. So these are the 3 territories I just mentioned, the 3 Algerian territories. So you just roll the dice once for them. You don't roll three dice for them. And so what happens is, if it's a 1 to 6, you place a Vichy roundel on each of them. This one here. And if it's a 7 to 12, you place a free French roundel on there. So it's one or the other, right? And you do that for every French colony on the board. You would also definitely place a Vichy roundel up here in southern France, and one in Corsica as well. Corsica goes Vichy France no matter what. That's this island here that is right here. So it's right off the coast of Vichy France. That's what where you would put that. Now, you started with these roundels, right? This is your French roundel. You won't have this roundel on the board anymore. It's either going to be the Vichy roundel or the Free French roundel, and you'll have them for every territory. And it'll tell you in the book there. And you know what? Once I know that this is correct and everything, then I'll put this out to the community so you could download it as well. Like, the France thing is 5 pages, so I just made this the 6th page, right? Because I was doing 2-sided pages anyway. So there's that, and then Um, there's the controlled minors. So if you have Abyssinia, then that would go to Free France, right? If you had taken over any territories, any minor territories, or you're at least controlling them, then those become Free France as well. And then there's the Navy. For each boat on the board. So every single boat you're going to roll the dice for. And this is a big deal. Like it takes a long time to do this turn. When Germany does this, it's usually their double impulse turn. It can take an hour or more to take this turn, because once you've done the Germany turn, then then you're rolling for all the territories. Then you're rolling for the boats. So each boat, you'll say, okay, this boat, and you roll a d12, and then this boat, and then you roll a d12. But anyway, what happens is 1 to 3, they join the Allies, so it becomes a Free French unit. 4 to 6 is scuttled, you remove it from the game. 7 to 10, it remains Vichy, then you move it to Sea Zone 49, which is up here. So you'll put all the Vichy boats up here, okay? And then 11 to 12, it joins the Axis, so you replace it with the German equivalent. Or if there was something over here in the Pacific Ocean, like if this boat hadn't moved, then you replace that one with a Japanese one. Okay, so that's how you would do that. And also there's on the scuttle chart here, this is something new for this version, I believe. I don't remember this being in version 2. So for the ships on the production chart, you roll a d12. Like here, this one will be gone, of course. This one goes on the board. It's already in the place units box. Let's just say you had these two here, okay? So 1 to 7, scuttle, remove it from the game. 8 to 10, remains Vichy France and stays on the production chart until Vichy France aligns to a major power or surrenders. Germany can lend lease IPP to Vichy for completion. Or you roll an 11 or 12, you replace with a German equivalent on the production chart. So you would take this battleship off and put a German battleship on. So that's different from rolling the ships that are on the board, right? None of them are going to go to the Free French. They're either going to go Vichy or lost or become German. So that's how that happens. And now I've got a big surprise for you. I'll be right back. Alrighty, here we go. Now this just happened today, okay? I talked to the guy about it yesterday, and he told me what was in the works. I said, well, I want to make that video, so you might have noticed that the Italian video came out first. That's because I was waiting for this. I didn't do the French video this morning. I did the Italian one. But this video might come out tomorrow. So whatever I said might add 2 days ago. So what's going to happen here? Is the Vichy and the Free French are going to go to war against each other. Now that's something that we thought was going to happen in version 3, and then the beta rules came out and it wasn't. It looked a lot like the version 2 rules, right? And so I know I was disappointed, and I talked to people online and on the phone, and they were disappointed as well. But after extensive play testing, they just found that it wasn't balanced, right? But they've managed to change some rules around, and they've been play testing the heck out of it for the last little bit here. I mean, these guys are really working hard over in Europe there, and they've managed to balance it. So that's what's going to happen. Now, let me go through it with you. I'll just read it. It's on my phone here, so I'll just read it off to you. I'll skip the parts that we've already done. So everything's going to happen just like I said. Paris is going to fall, and the German roundels are going to go on, and you're going to place the Vichy on. Then you're going to roll for everybody, right? The boats and all that, and the territories. Now, it says here, Vichy is a neutral minor power that is controlled by Germany. Vichy can receive lend-lease from Germany in southern France as long as it is as long as controlled. Vichy gets recruitment rolls from Corsica and southern France, which can be placed in any Vichy possessed land zone. Recruitment roll, that's you know that from Spain and from China, right? Like you count up the amount of land zones that you have, and then you roll the dice to try to get that. So what they're saying is that you get, as long as you have both of these zones, southern France and Corsica, then you have 2 zones. You're not going to count up all the other zones on the board. So it's just those 2 zones. So if you can roll a 2 or less, you get to place either a infantry or 2 militia in any Vichy land zone on the board, okay? That's the first thing. It says Vichy can only ever attack Free France. Vichy will align with Germany if Vichy is attacked by the Allies or Comintern. Axis powers may not attack Vichy. Internal French conflict. Vichy and Free France are in an internal French conflict. They may attack each other's units and land zones. A Free French attack on Vichy does not make Vichy align with Germany. So basically, you're going to war with each other. If Vichy attacks a Free French land zone containing units not from Free France, these units do not participate in combat and are removed to the nearest land zone in their possession. So basically, you can't pile a bunch of British units in a Free French zone to help defend against the Vichy. If the Vichy attack that zone, you're going to have to move the British units out of that zone if that happens. So if Vichy attacks Free French in a C zone containing other Allied naval units, these units do not participate in the combat but stay in the zone. So again, like if you were to move a bunch of British boats in with in a zone with the French, the Vichy can still come down and attack those French boats, and the British boats, it's like they're somewhere else. You know what I mean? They're in the other half of the sea zone or something. They don't participate, and that's basically it. They had to change the rules for the Free French a bit, and once they changed those, then it balanced it out. So I haven't even got to the Free French rules yet. I just jumped right to that. I was too excited. So let me just go through the Free French rules here. I don't know if any of these have changed now to allow this to happen, but where's my Free French card? Oh, here it is. So the thing about Free France, their home country is still France, right? For the Free French. And the new capital. So after the fall of France, you do all that rolling and everything that I talked about. And then you can pick anywhere. Any French zone you want. But you know, you're going to want to pick something. Like you're probably going to want to pick something that you think is secure and something where you're going to be able to receive Lend-Lease. Like this one here, I don't think it's as good. Like unless you were planning on making that into a major port, because you can only receive 3 IPP worth of stuff in here, right? So you might want to find something that has a major port on it, right? Like this one here has a major port, but then you're stuck on an island, right? So you'll look around the board and you'll try to find a place that has a major port on it, because then you can receive more Lend-Lease, right? And better units. Like you would only be able to receive a militia or a dude if all you had was a minor port on it, because that's how you're going to be able to fight with the Vichy. The Vichy is going to receive Lend-Lease from Germany, and the French are going to receive Lend-Lease from the Allies, and of course they've got that little bit of income too, right? And so when you receive the Lend-Lease, you receive it where your capital is. So like I said, that's why you're going to want to have a major port, or at least upgrade to a major port, right? Free France never surrenders, so doesn't matter. Even if they got no territories left, they're still not going to surrender, because one of their territories might get liberated later in the game, right? Now with builds, they're going to do this with all of the minor powers. They're going to have the same build chart. That's going to be militia, cavalry, infantry, and mountain infantry. I suggested that they put in this guy too, the French Foreign Legion, but I don't know. We'll see when the rules get written and published, but don't count on that one. And if Free France liberates Paris, it becomes a major power again. Until Free France becomes a major power, they are not able to research technology. And La Resistance, the first time Axis possessed Paris is captured by the Allies, Free France immediately receives 4 militia representing local resistance fighters. These may be placed in Free French possessed Paris and bordering land zones. So if you recapture Paris, you get 4 militia. And the victory objectives are the same. I'm just looking around here. Yeah, I think that's basically about it. I think that's it. So anyway, that's really, really cool, because I tell you, that's going to open the game up. For one thing, it's going to give the French players something to do, right? Like, it's all fun and games until you lose Paris, right? And then you're, okay, I got $3, what am I going to do? And you put a dude on, and that dude can't do anything, so you just sit there and wait for an hour and a half for your turn to come around again. But now you can wage war on the Vichy, right? And you're receiving Lend-Lease. Like, it's in the Allies' best interest to give you that Lend-Lease, right? Because the Vichy are not going to be very strong, right? And so if you can take those territories back, like, I'd be keying on the territories that are worth points, right? Trying to get those back and trying to get that money back, right? And starting there, right? And if you take southern France back, then that's it for the Vichy. Then they surrender. And you're going to have to use 2 different colors though. If you don't have 2 different colors for your French, in order to play it, you are going to have to. I've been using, like, this color here is obviously a little bit darker than the Axis and Allies units. Here's the Axis and Allies guy right here. So I might even paint them, like, I'm using this color here for the Vichy French, right? I might even paint them a lighter blue than that though, because make them stand out a little bit better. Like, if they're going to wage war against each other, then you're going to need to know. Before, it was no big deal because they didn't move and they didn't do anything. Like, if this was Vichy here, then whatever there was Vichy. You put a flag on, you knew that was Vichy, and it was going to be Vichy. Nobody could attack it until basically something happened in France, right? It changed hands again. But anyway, before that, you didn't know, or you did. It was easy to tell who was who. But now, if they're going to be moving around and they're going to be fighting each other, then that's not the case anymore, right? But like, it's going to make Africa a lot more interesting, because the bulk of the French colonies are down here, right? And there's lots of them. So I mean, like, these might be Vichy or something, right? And so, okay, Italy's got no room to expand. But if the Free French come and take them, well, now Italy's allowed to attack the Free French, right? The Free French are fair game. It's the Vichy French that are not fair game for the Allies to attack. And so that's gonna change the dynamic, right? If the Free French manage to hang on to Abyssinia, like, there's just gonna be a whole new dynamic that is introduced into the game, and I think it's gonna be really cool. It's like a civil war, right? And like, we've already got one civil war there and one civil war there. So let's have the French have a civil war too, right? Except for going on all around the world and not just in one little place. So that's really, really cool, and I can't wait to try it out. Morton assures me that it's balanced and that it's a lot of fun to play, and I think it would be. Just the thought of having it last year when we had some beta rules last summer that you could attack each other. I was excited about it, and then when the rules came out a couple months ago, they didn't have it. I was, what a bummer, But I guess they just couldn't make it work. But that's changed now. They've made it work, and I'm not sure if you needed to change anything on the Free French card or anything. I was just reading to you what was on there. That's the last thing I did there. So who knows, something on there might change or something too. But I think I've got the rules pretty much the way they're supposed to be. So, but when they get released though, take a good look at them and make sure that you're playing them right, because otherwise they might not balance right. But anyway, it's going to be fun, and France is going to be fun to play again. It's not just going to be some sad sack nation that nobody wants to play. It probably, I'd still rather play the Commonwealth, to be honest with you. But at least you'll have something to do. Before, like, it sucked being France. I got a dude and you put him on. Okay, I can't afford to do this turn, so you save up for 2 turns, then you buy an infantry and then you put them on. You know, okay, I've got 4 now. What am I going to do with them, right? It kind of sucked, right? So that's going to be better. Anyway, that's all I got for you today. That is France. So take care, everyone. General Hand Grenade